Hi, my name is Carla Arredondo, and on behalf of Pueblos de Lucha y Esperanza, I want to welcome you to our Forum of Candidates, Ward 9 of Minneapolis.
La injusticia nos afecta a todos nosotros. Por ejemplo, ¿cuántos de ustedes saben sobre el asesinato de George Floyd?
How many know they killed George Floyd?
Levanten la mano. Muchas gracias. Ahora, ¿cuántos de ustedes conocen sobre el asesinato de Mario Sánchez?
How many know somebody killed Mario Santos?
Gracias. Con esto comenzamos el foro.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Grace Berkey, and I work at the Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association. We're a neighborhood located in Ward 9, and we're happy to be helping co-sponsor this event with Pueblos por Lucha y Esperanza. We are hosting this forum to inform community members on the Ward 9 candidates, but this forum is not an endorsement or recommendation of any particular candidate or party. All Ward 9 councilmember candidates were invited to this event. We also want to remind you that Minneapolis has ranked choice voting elections. There is no primary election, and you have the power to rank candidates in the order of your preference in November. As you hear the candidates, consider not just your first choice, but also your second and third choices as well. We will post information about ranked choice voting to learn more in the chat.
Thank you everyone for coming. I'm the director of Pueblos de Lucha y Esperanza, and I want to welcome all of our candidates today to our forum. Just a few ground rules. We will be giving you a minute and a half or so to answer the questions, and after that, we will be stopping you. Again, I want to thank everyone that came out the last 2 weekends to help door knock and promote this flyer, so thank you to everyone. And to start off, we would like to ask the candidates, what skill or experience do you have that you believe will prepare you to be an effective council member and allow you to navigate bureaucracy, work with other council members, the mayor, and city staff? And we can start off with you.
Well, first off, I want to thank y'all for having me here today. My name is Al Flowers Jr., or everybody call me AJ. To the question of what experience do I have, I've been around politics my whole entirety of my life because of my family. My family is servants. My family have daycares. My father actually ran for mayor. My auntie was a Minneapolis police officer. So when we're talking about navigating, I'm a grassroots worker and outreach specialist. So when we're talking about navigating, I believe that I have all three experience levels is working with community outside, because that's where I come from first. When I fight for community first, because that's what side that I come from, and that's how I came into this place that I'm at right now. Secondly, the experience that I have working with Street Reach organization, I had an experience of being able to bring people together, young people in particular, and bringing them to the table, young people who had different sides of issues that and bringing them to a chance to be able to come together and have a immediate peace and be able to have a peace and heal some of that trauma that they have. I'm sorry, I'm nervous, so I'm stuttering a little bit. And lastly, one of the main things that I'm doing right now, and not only when I get there, I'm actually working with Minneapolis mayor, I'm actually working with city council member and working with the police department to hopefully get our streets back open and hopefully come up with a real solution to get some of these problems and issues solved. I'm not a politician, I'm a community guy, so I won't be a politician. If I get in there, I will always fight for community, and that's who I am, and I will always stand on that. Thank you for having me. Once again, it's AJ Flowers.
Thank you.
Good morning, too. I want to thank you all for holding this space for us. My name is Carmen Means. I'm currently the executive director of Central Neighborhood as well as Bryan Neighborhood. The skills in which I possess, I'm just a simple chick that understands what the power of community looks like. So I understand what does it look like to leverage power. I understand what does it look like to share power. I understand what does it look like to be able to have the community create their own table and be part of facilitating that. This does not negate the responsibility of being a person that is at a table, but it does give a different lens of perspective when you do not see a community as a checklist, but you deem the community to be vital and brilliant enough to bring their skills. I believe that a healthy community is only formed with the community being part of the strategy and the blueprint of what a new community looks like. Personally, I also am a bridge builder. I understand what it means to do work intergenerationally. I understand what it means to do work rather with the intentionality of bringing marginalized voices to tables and also creating spaces. I do understand the power of a gatekeeper. The gatekeeper is not one that closes the door, but one that opens the door, and that we have an opportunity to be in spaces to be able to continue again to create spaces. So leverage power, what the safety looks like. I believe one of my expertise is the ones to be able to know that to be able to be dual places, that you have your feet in both. You are in place in civil, and you also in the place of community to be able to bridge those gaps together. From a background of understanding what it feels like not to have, so I'm not preaching from a place of not knowing, I'm preaching from a place of growing, and so that's the space in which I possess.
¿Cómo estás? Assalamu alaikum. Greetings to all of you. First, I want to thank the organizers of this event for having us here together. For me, personally, my background is I have been a person that have always strived to collectively bring our communities together, and I started this way back about 23 years ago. That's when I first moved to this part of the 9th Ward, which is right on the Cap Food. Got off a bus there, lived on 3414 Minnehaha Avenue, Longfellow. From there, I worked with the unions, I worked with community organizations. I have been at the forefront, bringing people together so that we can have conversation on what is important in our community and how we can go about change. A little bit of part of my life, I lived in St. Cloud in central Minnesota, so I've been a big part of conversation of bringing Minnesotans, and especially in central Minnesota where there was a lot of communities facing a lot of hate, anti-Islamophobia, on many issues. So I've been at the front trying to bring everybody, rally everybody together and just fight on what is right. So for me, I'm bringing a father experience. I have 4 kids that I'm raising, and I want to be able to relate with all that have children and how our children will grow up in our community in 9th Ward and also in Minneapolis. So what kind of future do you want to leave our kids? So I want to be able to rally and bring people together so that we can
Excuse
really
me,
clearly
sorry,
have a
Haji, your
conversation.
time's up. We're just going to be real tight on cutting folks off because we have a limited amount of time. Thanks. Jason.
Hi, everyone. Before I begin, I just want to thank Pueblos de Lucha, Esperanza, and Powderhome Park Neighborhood Association for hosting this event today. I also want to talk about this special place that we're in today. This is where I was baptized, where I had my first communion, and took my confirmation classes. And I'm proud to stand here today as a LGBTQ Latino running for city council in the Catholic Church that I was raised in. To talk about that, I'm running because I believe that we need a world without police. We need a world that's going to build a new system of public safety to make sure that we build a safety net for all of our communities. But beyond that, I'm running not only because I know what it feels like to get evicted and kicked to the streets, it's because I experienced what Ward 9 feels like. Ward 9 is having a housing crisis, and I know what it feels like to experience that myself. I'm running because we need to hold the Minneapolis Police Department accountable. It's working with ICE, and it's deporting our immigrant, and it's killing our black and brown and indigenous communities. We need to make sure we're keeping that department accountable as well. Yeah, so when I talk about why I'm running and what we need, I'm running because we need to make sure that when we get to City Hall, we're keeping this department on check along with our communities at the forefront. I have experience working at the legislature right now where I work to pass legislation to make sure we can have rent control, to help rebuild Lake Street. So I do have that experience with government, but I also have that lived experience of Ward 9 and what it feels like to be here. So.
Hello, folks. My name is Michael Moore. Everybody calls me Mickey, so please call me Mickey. I'm born and raised right here in South Minneapolis, and over the last 50 years, looking back, I'd have to say that I had a pretty wonderful set of experiences so far. Unfortunately, talking to residents these days, people seem to think that things are changing for the worse. I'd like to address the question, which was about experience and my abilities. Most people know me as the guy who started the Braid Factory. The Braid Factory is an exclusive hair braiding salon that is celebrating its 25th year this year. We will be surpassing our 300,000th customers served. And the success that the Braid Factory has afforded me has allowed me to reach out to our community to lend my leadership skills to try to provide some direction and focus in a very desperate time. Ward 9 needs strong leadership. It needs professional and experienced direction and a focused effort to bring our residents what they deserve and what they need. And I hope we have a chance to talk about the very specific issues the rest of this forum. Thank you very much for our hosts for having us here, and I really look forward to listening to you and to talking to you more about these very important concerns that we all share.
Can you see me? Stand? Well, ain't that an honor? Hi, everyone. I'm Rita Ortega. I am also a candidate here. Thank you for allowing me to share space with you all and creating this space for us. I am a Little Earth resident. I was born and raised here. I was raised in Little Earth. I spent a few years of my life, from 10 years old to 14, homeless in a tent. I know what it feels like to be on them streets. I know what it feels like to be cold. I also know what it feels like to go through addiction. Every issue in which we're all facing and what we all see out here is something that I'm a product of. My family's been a product of. For generations, we have struggled with these issues and have been subjugated to not being heard. This is our time now, and I'm trying to take it. I'm the first Little Earth resident to ever run for public office, and I would be the first Indigenous woman elected to city council. This is a moment that we won't get back, and I can honestly say I take it extremely, very seriously to be standing here before you all today, because this is a huge responsibility, and I do know the commitment that it's going to take to deliver to everyone. I have experience working in City Hall, and I will deliver. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And actually, Rita, you can keep the mic because we're just going to go right back the way we came.
Okay, cool.
So the next question we'd like to ask you all this morning: what steps will you take to prevent Ward 9 residents from being displaced from their homes? We know many of you spoke to a housing crisis. What steps do you plan to take to prevent Ward 9 residents from being displaced from their homes?
So I'm gonna stand. So what I would do is fight for rent control, stop the privatization of public housing. Public housing needs to expand. I know what it feels like to live on just $10,000 a year. It's not easy, and it's a struggle. Living on welfare is not easy, and when you have to pay rent, it's not going to be any more easier. So I would expand public housing and then end the privatization of it. I also would fight for tenant opportunity to purchase. There's many different things that we can do to strengthen the laws for renters. And I will not stop until every person on the street, off the street, has a home. And that is my promise and my goal. I know what it feels like to be out there, and I will not allow it to continue. Thank you.
Yes, well, affordable housing has been a crisis in Minneapolis for decades. And one of the reasons why is because our city government has failed to address one of the root causes of this problem, and that is our giant home ownership equity gap. Rather than focus on transitioning residents into home ownership, our city government has continuously prioritized rental issues and catering to the development of more rental properties. In the last 7 years, over 90% of development in Minneapolis has been rental. That is not a solution. The solution lies in working with organizations and advocacy groups that have already made transitioning people into home ownership a priority. We need to make that a priority for our city. Transitioning our residents into home ownership is a win-win scenario. The homeowners win, our city wins, and that's the way you address the affordable housing issue from that aspect. And we have to refigure our city government priorities to make home ownership our most important effort. So all the policies and incentives we implement should be designed to first provide home ownership and make that a reality for our communities.
Yeah, this question is really personal to me. I talked a little bit ago about how my family and I at a young age faced eviction and were kicked to the streets. So when I get to City Hall, I'm going to be fighting to house every single resident in Ward 9 in Minneapolis. It's something that needs to happen now. The way to get there is by starting a Renters' Bill of Rights. We need to make sure that we pass rent control policies that stop displacing our communities. We need to make sure we pass a tenant opportunity to purchase so people at Powderhome Park that are about to be displaced, specifically the Latinx families, don't have to go through that. We make sure that we pass and fund the right to counsel initiatives to make sure that people have that right to legal counsel when they go to court, because oftentimes they're criminalized and penalized for not having money to make sure that they don't have that eviction notice on their notes. This is also important information, but I want to talk about the things I'm doing at the Capitol as well right now. I've been working on legislation to make sure we end that preemption bill and end preemption on rent control so we can have it statewide, making sure we have that right to counsel statewide as well. But I also want to make sure that we're expanding our housing stock to make sure that affordable housing options are available to every single Minneapolis resident. But also making sure that we stop the privatization of housing, because we got to house every single resident here. I guess I'm done.
Thanks, Jason. I'm just going to ask and remind all the candidates to speak loudly and hold the mic close so that everybody can hear you. And I'm going to repeat the question real quick just so that folks who are just joining us can hear it. The question is, what steps will you take to prevent Ward 9 residents from being displaced from their homes?
So I am for rent control. One. Two, I want to fight for affordable family unit housing in Ward 9 and throughout Minneapolis. I think this is very important. We have enough family homes in and around Minneapolis. And also home ownership. I think that is something, if I'm elected as your next city councilman, that I'm going to push so that we have more, especially for the black and brown communities that call Minneapolis home. We must fight so that we can help them move on to owning homes. And the possibilities are endless. Collectively also, I plan on working with advocates that fight on these issues and sit down with them and come up with solutions on how best we can move forward in making sure that we get where we want to get and we have equity in home ownership. And also, we deal with the issue of homelessness. I think it's been a big deal. We can see it everywhere. I think we should invest. And also, I think the idea of even having rent control can really help in dealing with some of the issues of homelessness in our community. So, we can deal with first of all, the most importantly, that each one of us has the dignity, is respected, and is sheltered in place, and make sure that we call this place home. And the only way we can all be proud and call this place home is making sure each one of us is properly housed and is properly taken care of, and that is what I'm going to make sure if I'm elected as your next city councilman.
Unfortunately, this is not foreign to me as well. I grew up in public housing. But we're talking about, I think that rental rights or rent freeze, of course, rent control is a piece of the solution. We're actually talking about a generational wealth gap. We're talking about a wealth gap that we have to be able to deal with at the root. I think one thing that we do very well is to deal with the symptoms and not ever dealing with the root. There's an economic lack of accessibility for people of color that are at the table so often, and what we do, we put band-aids on a gushing wound. There's a generational economic wealth gap, that there are a larger marginalized community that are poor. And that because of that, different accessibilities such as home ownership is only a verbiage, but it's not, it's a symbolism, but it's not a reality. How do we deal with this from a wholeness perspective? We're creating more opportunities. Everything is a domino effect. So we're talking about the housing crisis. We got to talk about job accessibilities that is able to be able to bridge generational wealth. How do we transfer generational wealth? What does change wealth look like? What does it look like to break generational poverty? And so right now we're talking about something that is about accessibility, but in the meantime, the immediate will be the rent control. Also creating jobs so that people can afford mortgages, and then also being able to challenge what does affordable housing look like? Is that even a thing? And so not saying it's not, but let's be real about this. What affordable to one may not be affordable to many. And so what does it look like with our people being able to be at a holistic place so that all their needs are met? Housing should not be a debate. It's actually a human right.
Well, yeah, I just want to say she kind of touched on what I was going to say as far as affordable housing. I think the problem with affordable housing is that the number we use right now is right around like 29,000. But when you think of single black and brown families and indigenous people, we're not, some of us is not making that type of money. So when you have that affordable housing rate there, that's not for us. So the first thing I would do is try to fix that average medium income that we're working off of when we're saying affordable housing, you know, to make sure that we actually have it affordable for the people that live in our ward, for the Ward 9 residents, and break it down in a ward map instead of using the whole Minneapolis map, you know, because it's different places and different money. More people make more money in different wards. So, and the next thing I would do, I will try to strengthen renter rights for our renters that's in there, for our renters that's there, so that they can't just be misplaced or evicted. Lastly, I think the biggest key is we have to have home ownership. As my brother Mickey said, we have to have home ownership, and I'm actually working now to work with some of the land trusts and different avenues that we have right now for people that can't afford it themselves, that can't take the traditional route to get a home, but still can get the rights of a home ownership right now. So I believe the options, the main things that we have to do is first work on the affordable housing rate and make sure that we lower that number so that it really serves the people of Ward 9. Secondly, strengthen our renters' rights. And lastly but not least, use some of the other avenues that we have in place and strengthen some of them, like stable homes and the community land trust, to help people who cannot take the traditional option of home ownership and equity.
Thank you. Now we will move on to public safety. This question is whether under the potentially new Office of Public Safety or our current police force, what role do you envision police officers playing in public safety, and how many officers do you believe are needed in Minneapolis? And we'll start off with you.
I believe, first off, I believe the first thing we have to do is make sure that we can hold our officers accountable for their actions, no matter what system of public safety or anything we have. The main thing I look at, and I always have talked about, was qualified immunity and accountability for the officers. So I believe that some of the issues that we're fighting right now within Minneapolis is not actually a Minneapolis issue. It's actually an issue by the state. No one should have the right to take another human's life based on what they feel. So that's my first thing that I would say on that. Secondly, I believe, so obviously, I believe that we can still work with our peace department, with our peace officers, and find a way to actually bring in some new officers that is people of color, that's from the community, that's actually young, so that we can actually change the culture in there. One thing about me, I'm a fighter. I stood up and protested with Jamar Clark. I stood up and protested with Philando and George Floyd. You know, so I would not let police get off the hook. I think the problem is we wait until the bodies drop before we start really getting out there and fighting, instead of actually working on tangible solutions right now. If I get in there, I will make sure to collaborate and hold officers accountable and fight for legislation at the state level to actually have officers accountable, because as long as you are able to do something with a qualified immunity level, then you're always going to have a little more reactionary mind frame if you know you're not going to get in trouble for it. That's anybody, that's human nature. But I believe we work together. We need our police at the full capacity of the Charter Amendment as it says right now, and I will make sure to collaborate and hold them accountable as well.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. Whether under the potentially new Office of Public Safety or our current police force, what role do you envision police officers playing in public safety, and how many officers do you believe are needed in Minneapolis?
Yes. Um, One thing that I think we all can agree on is, what I hope that we all agree on, is the way in which policing shows up right now does not serve us as a community. So first, accountability, accountability, accountability. And then having the brilliance, having the communal brilliance and the bravery to reimagine what does policing look like. I am not for the dissolving of a total police force. However, I am for the reimagining of what does it look like moving forward. I believe again, from the holistic perspective, dealing with the mind, body, and soul completely for a healthy community has to deal with what does first of all, the policing does. The policing is not there to really prevent, but the policing has a role to play. However, the role that the police plays also needs to involve resources in the community. What does it look like with investing in resources so that there are calls that are being made, is being put in the right hands, such as mental illness, so that our people experiencing homelessness is not a crime and they are not dealt with as criminals. So for me to reimagine in policing would be in the space that we begin to invest in resources so that our communities can become whole. And one thing I will not do is normalize and sacrifice black and brown bodies. Anytime that there is a transition that's even being made now, we have to pay the cost of being the living sacrifice, and we do not want to do that. So what does it look like for us to be whole and complete, keeping police accountable, holding the police union accountable, and also being one to understand that there is a bigger level of resources so that we will not be intervention but also prevention.
Thanks, Carmen. Time's up.
Thank you very much. First of all, there's a lot of debate about what's going on, or how do we proceed, and what we do. For me, it's personal. Why is it personal? Because first of all, education component should be a very big part of what we want and how we want to police our community. I think people don't understand the history of policing in this country. For you really have to do your research and go back and understand why policing is what it is today. We cannot have a police union that stands up with Donald Trump on stage here in Minneapolis, and it's the same officers that want to police our communities. It's two different worlds. We come from two different perspectives. I'm raising 4 kids, 1 girl and 3 boys. I want them to grow in a place where they are treated fairly, they have their dignity, they are respected. We black and brown and indigenous people, parents, we are fearful for the future of our children. So for me right now, as we continue on this day, because I only have 30 seconds and there's so much I want to say. As we continue on moving on, debate how we want to police and reimagine how our police will look like, what I suggest for now is we must have a community-involved policing, because also small businesses owned by black and brown people on Lake Street, on 9th Ford, are really getting affected. The small businesses are the ones who are hiring within our community. So also we have victims of crimes
Sorry,
in our
Haji.
neighborhood. So
Time's up.
yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. I believe that the Minneapolis Police Department is beyond reform and repair. We currently have a system of public safety that kills black, brown, and indigenous bodies. We have a system of public safety that criminalizes our communities and terrorizes them. And we need to build a new Department of Public Safety that's going to keep every single person safe. And it needs to have conversations with community, our small businesses, and every single person impacted. Right now, we need to make sure that we fund our communities, we fund our villages, we fund the city of Minneapolis. And that means making sure we have youth intervention, youth employment programs to make sure our youth have the skills necessary to move forward. So when they get older, they have those skills and good paying jobs to make sure that they can feed their families. We need to move money into housing stock, into affordable housing options to make sure that our communities have a place to live, to make sure that they don't have to resort to violence, to make sure that they can live where they're at. I do believe in a future where we don't need a Minneapolis Police Department. And the reason for that is because the Minneapolis Police Department continues to deport my people, it continues to hurt and kill my friends, and I will not stand by that. We can have a community-led and community-centered vision of public safety where our communities can finally take that power back and lead and do the change that we need to see.
Okay, well, I think one thing everybody here and at home can agree on is that our city deserves a strong public safety department. where people feel safe to walk the streets, people feel safe to visit their local businesses, people feel safe in their homes and their cars. That's not happening right now. We need a stronger police effectiveness. And we can't really know how that translates into numbers right now because of how ineffective and inefficient our police operation is. We need to have a designed plan where we are sending the right type of public assistance out for these various 911 calls. Right now, all the emergency calls are going to the police. And even the non-violent, non-criminal, non-emergency assistance calls are being handled by armed police officers. But we don't need an armed police officer or officers to respond to all the 911 calls. We're going to have to create solution-oriented divisions of mental health professionals, de-escalation experts, crisis interventionists that can handle the calls that are non-emergency, non-criminal, and non-violent. And then, after we've successfully integrated that into our public safety, we can determine whether or not we have the right number of police officers to handle the crime that exists in our city. So it's going to take a lot of intelligent strategy to come up with a solution for this.
Thanks, Mickey. Rita, you're up.
I do want to say that police does not define safety. We do. The community. The community defines safety. Remember that. We don't need police to feel safe. I know that because I'm out on these streets protecting at night. I know what it's like to patrol. But I do a hell of a better job than a cop. I know that because I actually interact with my community. I don't wait until somebody does something to go to jail to interact with them. I don't wait until I feel like I need to do something. So I know what it feels like to lose a child to the police. I have. And I do know that we need a process in place. We're not going to end up with no police right as soon as we get there. It's going to be a process. And also, I want to say that, like Mike said, we're not going to be able to know for sure how much officers we'll need. But I can say defunding and putting it into housing, putting it into mental health workers is going to make a difference. Putting it into dealing with the opioid crisis will make a difference.
Rita. Sorry, Rita. Time's up.
Go ahead.
Thank you, everyone. Our next question is, most resources and information provided by the city aren't available in languages other than English. What commitments can you make to ensure that Spanish, Somali, and other common languages in Ward 9 are also used by the city? So again, that's what commitments can you make to ensure that Spanish, Somali, and other common languages in Ward 9 are also used by the city? And Rita, we'll go right back to you.
I would prioritize funding into our interpretive services. There's a department within the city of Minneapolis that has interpreters at our disposal. So I would invest in making sure that we are hiring more people of color, because it's all people of color that work in there. That's going to be a very good opportunity for our people to have a city job, a union job at that. It's very difficult for our communities to get union paying jobs. And why is that? Because we have criminal records. And why do we have criminal records? Because the police target our communities. So, it's all interconnected. Let's remember these issues stem from each other. To actually address the roots is to address the actual foundation of systemic racism within our system. But I'm on 30 seconds, so I'm going to calm myself down. So I am going to say it's not going to change by just getting rid of one police department and investing in interpretive services is not going to change the racism within this system. It's going to take a hell of a lot of work and a lot of different governments levels to change it. Thank you.
On my campaign team right now, I have members of every community, members of the Somali community, members of the Latinx community, members of the indigenous community, members of the East African immigrants, Asian immigrants, members of the African American community, obviously, and members of the LGBTQIA plus community. And I pledge to include this kind of diverse representation when I'm the next city council member. I will have people from every community represented actively, not just with me at city council staff, but when I open our local ward office, which is a brand new thing that we haven't had here in Ward 9, I will have a fully staffed group of residents that resemble our community, a very diverse and inclusive group of people that our ward can feel comfortable coming in to talk to about all of their issues. So issues like translating and proper representation and diversity in representation will be a highlight of our administration. And we will work to create that. We will work to make the idea of not having the proper representation, the proper translated languages, a thing of the past in Minneapolis. After I'm in the city council, we'll never have to discuss this question again.
Can you repeat the question again?
Sure, yep. The question is, what commitments can you make to ensure that Spanish, Somali, and other common languages in Ward 9 are used more often by the city?
Yeah, so like I said, I was born and raised in the East Phillips neighborhood, and growing up, my family owned a home in the East Phillips neighborhood, and our soil was contaminated. And when the government told us that our soil was contaminated, they sent a letter to our home in English, a language that my parents can't read or understand or speak. And I was a young kid. I didn't know the big words. I didn't know what that meant. And even then, I have always served as a translator for my family, but I didn't know what it meant. Just know that I had a government that told me I can't eat from the soil that we had. I wish the government would have had translator services at that moment, or would have sent us a letter in Spanish or a different language to make it accessible, but they didn't. And that itself is racism. I want to make that clear. But I do speak Spanish, so I do have the privilege of speaking another language to communicate with a lot of people in this ward. But I want to make it clear that I also, when we get to City Hall, need to make sure that we have people on our staff that do speak different languages to make sure that we can communicate with people in our ward, because not everybody speaks English as a first language. And I do make that commitment because it's really important to make sure that we reach out to every single person in our ward, because oftentimes people that don't understand English are being left behind. So it's really important for me.
You know, how do we provide service if there's a language barrier in any situation? We have residents that come from different part of the world that call Ward 9 home. In Minneapolis, we have people that speak different kind of languages. It is important, and absolutely yes, we must have. In City Hall, we must have translation. We must have languages that reflect who we are as a community and what we're trying to say and what kind of message we want to communicate to each other. And as part of that leadership, I want to be very clear on how I want to go about that, because I think, you know, one of the things is that information is a very powerful tool in all our communities, and how that information is transmitted is very important, not only to English-speaking communities, but every other community that call Ward 9 or that call Minneapolis home. And I want to be able to be in a position where that is very clear, and we have a plan, a roadmap to get that done. There is a lot of most often there's a lot of miscommunication. We have some communities that are really struggling in trying to know on what's going on when it comes to matter of voting, when it comes to matter of policing, when it comes to matter of even just everyday running of our community and our leadership. So language is a huge barrier, and it's something that we can collectively overcome, working to make sure that everyone has access to information
Excuse
from
me,
City Hall.
Haji. Sorry, time's up. Carmen?
It's an old saying that says that you're either at the table or on the menu. And I think we need to be not deceived that just because it is in your language does not mean it's in your favor. And so representation and imagery is everything. So in order to understand that part of it being in your language is a small piece of your consideration, but being at the table is the bigger piece, and where the shared power has to be given or even taken in some cases. So I want to make sure that representation is a thing that we have a shared power, and once your voice is at the table, then you advocate. And so I don't want us to be caught up in the semetics or the symbolization that you are considered as a people of color. The consideration happens at the spot when you can make the decision, so that this doesn't even have to be a question. This is part of our culture. This becomes the norm to have information passed with the consideration of who the marketing group is, which is us in our communities.
Hate going after Miss Means, yeah. No, absolutely. This is one of the reasons why I'm glad that I'm here today, because I mean, being completely transparent, this is something that I wouldn't know about, or probably a lot of people in the city wouldn't know about, because it seems small to some, but it can be major to most, right? If you have a situation where you're talking about eviction or something and it's not in your language, and you look up and now the police come knocking on your door telling you it's time for you to go. So that can definitely be an issue. One of the things I would do would make sure, coming from my office, I would make sure that all of my information that's sent out is in every language: Somali, Asian, and Latina X, community. And next thing I would do is I would go tell the people in the city, why don't they have it done? Like I'm wondering why it's not bigger to fight. But the main thing we got to stay focused on is the actual tangible things that we need to get changed. You get what I'm saying? What can we do to actually get the people in the room, to get the people to actually say what it is that we need? That was one of the main reasons I came here today, so I can hear more, so I can learn how to better fight. One thing about me is I like to be knowledgeable in everything that I fight for. So as long as I know I've been fighting for immigration and different things, but it's some issues that I wouldn't know about, just like it's issues within my community that's not going to get televised, and nobody's not going to know about outside of just what we get to see on TV. So this is why I'm glad that I get to hear this, and I can tell you, I can guarantee you, coming from my office, at least to start with, once I am in city council, I will make sure that it's sent out in every language possible for our Ward 9 residents.
Thank you. Now, knowing the amount of change and investment that is occurring on Lake Street and around the area, how will you ensure that local business owners are prioritized and supported?
Well, I will fight to make sure that the money that's already coming in, that we're getting from the federal state money, I would make sure that money is coming to the local businesses, and not only just the local businesses, but finding a way to rebuild in a way for our local businesses and businesses on Lake Street, to strengthen them in a way and make it more culturally adaptable for everyone, and make it so that everybody can come through and we can have the protection that's needed for our businesses, and give them an opportunity to buy into on our public safety plan when we're talking about reimagining. Give them a chance to buy in so that they can have, because most of the time, most interactions that we have come from our local businesses. So one of the main things I would do is strengthen them. I will fight for the money that's already coming down for them, and making sure that the little people is not left off the table. Because one thing that you do know is that a lot of the business that is on Lake Street, a lot of them is ran by some of the same people. The ownership of it. So finding a way to make sure that those people are not displaced out their business, are not getting railroaded on their pricings from the owners of these businesses and land on Lake Street.
Yes. Knowing the amount of change and investment that is occurring on Lake Street and around, how will you ensure that local business owners are prioritized and supported?
So I'm currently working with local businesses to make sure that this happens. And I must highlight, let's be very clear, Lake Street is part of a larger community. And so, yes, Lake Street have received money. I believe we're up to about $10 million, but let's be also very clear. That is not a lot of money when you're talking about the redevelopment of small businesses. Small businesses is one of the ways in which we break generational poverty. So we have other businesses that also has been highly impacted that have not seen a dime. The only resolution that have been given has been loans. One of the loans that has been mentioned recently is a $50,000 loan in which the city is promising but a 40-year commitment. And we know to businesses of color, that is crazy, a 40-year commitment for this loan to be forgivable. So with that, we first have to be very clear that Lake Street, again, is only part of the community. There is a huge community in which small businesses all throughout of Ward now are suffering. However, the emphasis, and then the other part of that, how do we make space for other small businesses, for other ideologies, for other ideas for generational poverty to be broken through the ownership of businesses. So there's a lot of work to do, but $10 million, it may sound great, that's not a lot of money, and it's much more money out there that should be given and not loaned to businesses of color in order, if they are really for marginalized businesses, being able to thrive in this community.
So I've known Lake Street for almost 22 years. It's one place I always want to drive through. It is just amazing to see people that have come from nowhere build something out of nothing and build a business, especially black, brown, and indigenous people. I mean, this is the diversity of Lake Street if you look at it. And by the way, I just want to be clear on one thing. Black lives, or we, the peaceful protesters, did not burn our streets or our homes. There were people that came outside our community, came in and burnt all our businesses, strategically targeting specific places. If you go on Lake Street right now, you can look which places have been targeted and why that was important. Banks have been targeted. Places that we really depended on small businesses have depended on Lake Street or burnt down. So there's a narrative that being pushed by white supremacy out there. No, we did not. We came peacefully and we were peacefully protesting on important issues. But small businesses on Lake Street are important. They have been affected by COVID-19. They have been affected by the aftermath of the peaceful protest where we had people infiltrating our protest and burning our businesses down. We need no interest loan for small businesses on Lake Street. We don't need long-term obstacles put on small businesses on Lake Street. We need to make sure that they have security, because those businesses, when I have conversations with small businesses on Lake Street, they tell me,
Sorry, Haji. On to Jason.
So I have a lot of friends, family, and as in family, a lot of aunties and uncles that own small businesses in Ward 9 and Lake Street. And the number one thing they tell me is that they're scared about the gentrification that's about to happen in our ward. They're very scared that big developers are going to come into Lake Street and take our culture away. And when I mean our culture, it means all of our communities that have made Lake Street what it is today. I'm currently working at the Minnesota House of Representatives. I work for the Workforce and Business Development Committee. I've been working on legislation called the Promise Act that would help rebuild Lake Street, West Broadway, University Avenue. So when Carmen's talking about, it's not just about Lake Street, it's not just about Ward 9, it's also about helping rebuild the Twin Cities that were heavily impacted this summer. And it would bring $267 million back into Lake Street. And we have to fight hard to make sure gentrification doesn't kick our community members out. Because we're barely surviving here. We can barely pay rent, we can barely eat food, and our small business owners aren't people that have a lot of money. They're also working class people that can barely make a living, and they're about to be left to just leave. I have family members and friends and owners of small businesses that tell me that they're like $7,000 in debt already, and that they can't even own their own building because people, like AJ talked about, the same people own the same buildings and they want them out. We gotta make sure that the people in small businesses can own their own building, own their own stores, to make sure that power is given back to the community.
Yeah, I can tell you, as a small business owner who has owned locations on Lake Street over the course of the last 25 years, this is a significant problem. And the problem stems from poor city leadership. Our city government, our city planners, are the ones who open the doors purposefully, focusing on big development and the gentrification because they believe that brings in more money. They believe that overall that's good for the city image. They loop out and exclude the concerns and needs of small businesses over and over again. This is why small businesses have to rely on local advisories and small group councils and the 48th Street Business Group and the Lake Street Business Group, because they're not getting real partners with our city government. And that's what we need to change. We need to change our leadership. We need to restructure our priorities from the city level so that we are creating opportunities and incentives. We partner with the state legislature. We partner with the federal legislature to bring in funding, financing, and opportunities to keep our small businesses strong.
Well, yeah, so I think everybody touched a little bit on this already, and I feel pretty last now, like, so I'm just like, wow, now what do I say? But, yeah, it is city staff. We're dealing with it with the roof depot. It's a prime example of what our government is focusing on. They're focusing on big development. They're focusing on profits. The money over the people, right? And the only way we're going to be able to change that is to change the inside of that government. Start putting in more people of color working in that government. For right now, it is majority, I'll be honest, white. And that's not going to be helpful to our city, especially when we have a hell of a lot of people of color in this damn city and we vote. So let's remember who we're voting for and who's going to actually start addressing the staff there. Of course we need to invest in our small businesses, but we're not going to be able to invest unless our city staff are starting to bring that shit to the goddamn council. Sorry. But yeah, I'm getting up frustrated, but I've had a long night. I also want to say that as I've said before to certain people on the phone, I will have my office on Lake Street. Why? Because I need to make sure that I see it
Sorry, Rita.
and feel the change myself.
Time's up, Rita, but you're going to be next on the next question. So this next question is from the community. The question is, what is the plan for the opioid crisis going on in our community? And you can start on that one, Rita. Yeah, I see that.
So, opioid crisis, well, we need to actually start addressing the gap between getting them into services. There's no more that waiting period. Right now, how the system's set up is that they go out, get a Rule 25, and then we lose track of them because they have to wait for 3 to 4 weeks, sometimes almost 2 months, just to figure out if we can get them a bed. We need to focus on that moment right when they say they want to quit. They should be able to quit right there. We should not tell them to wait. Why is it that we tell them to get sober just to take a Rule 25? We shouldn't even have to tell them that. We should be telling them, get a Rule 25 now, regardless you're sober or not, and then come in and get when you're ready to be sober. I'm so tired of seeing my people die. I'm tired of doing CPR on my own people, on my own friends. I've watched too many of my childhood friends that I went to school with in Four Winds that I had to bury. And I'm done. This damn system's not going to fix itself. It's going to take us.
Well, this is an issue that people like to just kick down the road, isn't it? We haven't been properly addressing this issue for 10, 15 years. And it's going to take a comprehensive set of intelligent and proven strategies. We're going to have to adopt ideas that have been proven to work in other cities. We're going to have to attack this issue from multiple levels. We can't wait until an overdosed person is dropped off at the emergency room to try to solve this problem. We have to get into the programs. We have to get into the youth interventions. We have to get into funding opportunities for people so that they don't make these choices at the beginning, not worry about trying to solve these problems at the end. We have to do something about creating a partnership with groups, organizations, charities, and nonprofits that have made dealing with this issue their life's work. They've already put together intelligent ideas and programs and solutions that the city just doesn't partner with and doesn't adopt. We need to change our priorities about this and start looking at organizing with these groups to initiate the programs into our own system, into our own city structure.
Sorry, Mickey, time's up.
Right now, the city needs to start working on ways to prevent and help, not respond. I think part of the root cause is that a lot of our community members don't have housing. A lot of our communities don't have the jobs, the union jobs necessary to pay for food and housing. They don't have the social support networks to make sure that they feel important because they are. If we figure out the solution to all those things, which our community has the answers to, this doesn't have to happen all the time. We need safe injection sites all over our ward to make sure that our community members can be safe. We make sure that we do actually put funding into our community members to help them have the help necessary to go through this and get the help needed to during these times. Yeah, I think at the city level, like I said, we just got to make sure that we're working with our community members, not just responding to it after someone has passed away. So
I've been going around having this conversation about a year ago when the crisis was ongoing, and I just to listen to people and listen to professionals and community activists, everyone in our community having this conversation and how it's affecting many of our communities here in Ward 9. I think what I came to understand from that conversation and from those meetings is that the most important thing, I think, what our youth, we need to be able to have a place for our youth. When it comes also to the issues of mental health, we must have a place for our youth. Sports and recreation, we must have a space for our youth. Educational components to the parents must be provided to the parents. Sometimes you have a lot of parents that are not English speaking, and most often times they cannot even tell. I don't have the signs of seeing what's going on with their child, and so there should be an educational component of telling the parents to look out for signs, and also treatment. I think treatment should be a big deal. Also collectively, I think we should have other players involved in dealing with these issues. This issue is a big. We cannot have a community if we have a generation of youth who are dying on our watch. We can't call ourselves community. We have to take care of each other as humans. We have to take care of each other as parents, as neighbors, as friends. We must look out for each other. And we have the ideas, and we can
Time's up,
collectively do it.
Haji. Thank you.
Thank you. I cannot talk about opiates without talking about crack epidemic. And so I have to talk about it because what our black and brown people that are watching have to be aware of, this does not become an epidemic until it became a white problem. When it became a white problem, then it became an epidemic. Indigenous folks has been dying of this. In our communities, crack cocaine, when it hit, I'm here as a result of running from Chicago because of the crack cocaine epidemic. And so we first have to acknowledge that, that it did not become an issue until it became a white people's problem. And so now when we're talking about it, number one, moving swiftly and moving when people are asking for help isn't needed, but are there resources to match the need? So once the Route 25 is then given, and then if there's a immediate response, is there resources as people are planning and wanting and desiring to exit from this? How are we building resources so that people are not only in, but there is a longevity of what it looks like to be free from addiction? And then not omitting the responsibility of dealing with the why. We got to deal with the the root, unless it will become this perpetual behavior, and our kids will inherit our addictions without inherit their promises. So let's be clear, crack cocaine destroyed communities when it became a white people's problem. And let's also be clear, this is also a business in which which whites are profiting off of the poverty and the marginalized of what it is happening when these resources are given in our communities.
Well, I'm AJ, and I second that comment. No, I'm just kidding. But absolutely, I was going to actually say the exact same thing. You know, we got to make sure that we understand that these are issues that has been facing our community, black and brown and indigenous community, especially over here in Ward 9 and in the south side of Minneapolis. These has been going on since I've been a kid, and I'm 28 years old. So, you know, it's been going on forever. And before I was a kid, right, when my dad was a kid. So this has been going on a long time within our community. I think we had to stop criminalizing that behavior and acting like addiction is a crime. Someone having an addiction problem is a crime, and actually find real treatment centers. The one thing I look at when I walk through over in our ward is that we have a lot of these problems that deals with addiction and different things, whether it's going down Lake Street or going down Bloomington ourselves. But then I look around and I don't see enough treatment centers or real valuable treatment centers, because some of these treatment centers, as Margarita said, some of these treatment centers is just not working. They're too strenuous. It's too much work to even get in the process of trying to change your life, as if this is not a real issue that we're facing. So for me personally, one of the main things I would do to fight all addiction, not just the opioid crisis, to fight the crisis that's going on in all our communities, is always go fight back to the root causes and actually develop real treatment strategies and bring on people who really understand these issues, and bring on people from all communities where it's facing and devastating our communities, so that we can really come up with real tangible solutions, such as real treatment centers, and having more accessibility to these treatment centers.
Thank you, candidates. For our last question from the community, describe the steps you would take and who would you partner with to create good paying jobs. Again, describe the steps you will take and who you will partner with to create good paying jobs.
Well, first I will partner with a lot of the businesses that's in our ward first to create some apprenticeship programs for our young people, starting at a younger level so they can make money. The main thing and the main goal is I will partner with our union, trades, and STEM boards to make sure that we can get real programs and livable jobs into our thing. One thing I learned from the job workforce employment type of work when I was doing that, because I did a lot of work trying to get people jobs, is that we will get out here and we'll tell our people to come off the streets or different type of things, but then the job we have to offer only be, you know, $10, $11, $12 an hour. Now, I'm not advocating or nobody doing the wrong thing, but I mean, it's hard to tell somebody who making $1,500 a day to go make $12, $10 an hour when we can really get more good paying jobs working with our unions, our trades, and our STEM programs to get our kids into IT, get our kids into carpentry, get our kids into electrician work, plumber works, for the people who does not want to go to college. Because some of my friends, the people that I know, they don't have some of these same opportunities, and they end up going down the wrong route. But if they had a chance to just get a good paying job, and to me, I believe a livable wage is really needed. You know, we got to make sure that we understand life is expensive. I got 3 kids, so life is really expensive, and we got to have real good paying jobs, working with our unions and getting more representation in our unions, because we have always been like a supporter of the union, but it's not enough representation for people that look like me, and that's one thing I will fight for, to give our kids that chance and opportunity to get real good paying jobs working in IT, union, and trades.
Yes. Describe the steps you would take and who you would partner with to create good paying jobs.
I will first partner with, echoing everything Brother AJ said, and emphasizing the creation of skills, interchangeable skills. When we're talking about, again, breaking generational poverty, let's also be clearly aware that poverty is a billion-dollar business. The poor people make more money for rich people. All right? And so this is about breaking the concept. This is about creating new opportunities. This is also about strengthening our local businesses, not taxing our local businesses, but being able to give our small businesses that accessibility to more resources to be able to have on-job training, and then skills that we're talking about, being opportunities at this table with union jobs, proper insurance. I think insurance as well, to be properly health care is also associated with great paying jobs. So how do we create, once again, a holistic dynamic that is able to not only for ourselves benefits, but also our kids, so that then as the ball is rolling, I then can be able to be in places of home ownership. So what would I do? The proper, number one, who's already in the community that's doing the work, being able to properly resource those organizations, being able to bring in the marginalized so that more jobs can be created and more skills can be created. So then we can break the poverty problem.
I think the most important thing, just to again echo what my brothers and sisters have clearly articulated and said, we must organize. It must be a grassroots effort to really highlight the inequalities that we face in our communities, especially when it comes to paying. Ward 9, our poverty rate in Ward 9 is very high, and most of our community, our neighbors and people that we call friends are going through some really, really tough times. And this most of the time, the rent, you can't pay somebody $12 an hour and then expect them to pay about $1,600 to $2,000 a month for rent. It just, what do you eat? What do you do? Like I said, people look for other way to access money, and it's important that, like I said, that we have to collectively organize on a grassroots level, working with the unions, working with organizations that are fighting for fair wage, that are fighting for issues that are important to our community, and that is very important moving forward. So good paying job should be a priority. This is something that we must advocate for. This is something that we must use our collective voice to push for, so that we can at least alleviate some of the issues of inequality in some of our communities, and that is very important.
Haji. I know you keep giving it to me. Before I answer the question, I just want to make it clear that we need to start fighting beyond the $15 minimum wage. That time has passed, and our communities need money now, and they need that support system. I think right now an important thing that the city of Minneapolis needs to do is expand the step-up program that helps employ youth starting at the age of 14. We need to make sure we're working with our union friends to make sure that not only are we providing jobs, we're providing jobs that teach you skills to make sure you make that money. One of my good mentors always tells me this, and it sticks with me. He says a good way to end a lot of the problems we have right now is giving a friend, a brother, a sister, a sibling that $60,000 job with union protection. And granted, it's not going to save everything, but it's going to help solve a lot of the issues. I know it would have made sure my mama didn't have to work 3 jobs just to make sure I could eat. Like I said, I also work for the Minnesota House of Representatives in the Workforce and Business Development Committee. So every day we're fighting to make sure we fund youth employment programs, to make sure we're funding employment programs, to make sure our communities can have the bread. We keep fighting for crumbs, and we should be fighting for that bread. I want to make sure that I also work with the state. We need city councilors that are willing to work with our state legislators to make sure we bring jobs to Ward 9 to make sure that we can live.
Well, what a great question. Economic opportunity is so critical for Ward 9 right now, and it's not a matter of partnering with one particular group. We need a full court press of partnerships with everybody, with the unions, with the vocational and trade schools, making sure higher education options are available, accessible, and affordable. We need to find private industries that are willing to offer internships and apprenticeships. But more than that, I want to talk about something that gets to the city leadership. I said I'm the guy that started the professional hair braiding industry in Minnesota. When I first opened the braid factory, the state of Minnesota shut us down. They tried to. They issued cease and desist orders and temporary restraining orders and even put me in jail for braiding hair. They said it was illegal. But the more they did that, the more locations I opened. And eventually, we won our case, and there are now 45 or 50 hair braiding and natural hair care salons throughout the metropolitan area, employing 350 different people. And we need to embrace these opportunities. Why did it take so long for Minneapolis to legitimize and legalize the idea of food trucks? Why does it take so long for Minneapolis to jump on board a great business like marijuana? Somebody's going to come in and make $1 billion on that. We need to reserve those innovative businesses for the communities that need it the most, like in Ward 9.
Yeah, I think what Mick's trying to get at is we need to support our entrepreneurs. We need to actually fund and not tell people what kind of jobs are available. We need to actually make jobs that suit them, that they want, that, like I'm doing it right now, that they end up wanting to do. I'm working with SEIU and 4 other organizations to pretty much fund patrols, community patrols, to get them the training that they need to be able to be professional security guards in our communities. It's been a long road, you know, and it's I'm very grateful for their partnership and being able to work with our community patrollers along with, you know, the unions, along with DSA, to be able to create this program. And I'm very honored to have their support in doing this. So if I could do it once, I know I can repeat it in other places as well. We need to fund our artists. We need to be able to make sure that they are getting jobs, that this is not something that they have to do by project. We're supporting them in their work. And that's what we need to do for our community. We done?
Thank you. I would like to thank each and every one of you for coming and spending the time to answer community questions and give us a little more information about you guys and running. On behalf of Pueblos de Lucha and Esperanza, I would like to invite our co-founder, Antonia, and Grace from PPNA to say a few last words.
Mi nombre es Antonia Álvarez, soy presidente de Pueblos de Lucha y Esperanza. Y primero que nada quiero agradecer a la audiencia que nos ha seguido y les prometo que este evento lo vamos a traducir a español, por eso es que estoy hablando en español primero. Lo voy a decir en inglés, couple seconds. También quiero agradecer a los estudiantes de la Universidad de Minnesota que van a hacer un proyecto del evento del foro del día de hoy y ellos van a tener eventualmente una pregunta para los candidatos. También quiero agradecer a los candidatos porque tomaron su tiempo para salir a caminar a las calles con nosotros, hablar con el vecindario y tomar responsabilidad de venir aquí a este evento. My name is Antonia Alvarez. I'm co-founder Pueblos de Lucha en Esperanza and I'm president in Pueblos. I want to say appreciated to the audience in this forum. And I want to say to the University Minnesota, they have a project for this event, and they have a plan answer the questions for you guys in the future. And I want to say thank you so much, everybody, for coming for 2 weeks, knock the doors, and take responsibility for this forum. We are work together, and I hope whatever who is the person and the city council member, please, you need to recognize the community, not only when you run. This is not a competition. We're looking for justice for all. We have a lot of struggles in the communities, not only for the Afro-Americans, not only for Latinos, not only for Asians. We are together in this injustice, and we need work together for justice. Never forget my name. I'm organizer with the Latino community, and when we knock the door, when you are the city council and open the door, I promise I put in people in the front of the office, okay? You need a representation, all the people. Thank you so much for today.
Thanks, Antonia. My name is Grace Berkey again. I work at the Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association. I also wanted to thank all of our candidates and all of you for tuning in. The Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association is committed to ensuring that we continue to share information about these candidates. You can also look them all up online. They all have websites with additional information. I want to remind you all that in Minneapolis, there's ranked choice voting. So you'll be able to vote for these council members in November, and you'll be able to pick your first, second, and third choice. I also just want to let folks know that this video will be translated into Spanish and posted online. So whether you're tuning in as an English speaker or a Spanish speaker today, you'll be able to watch a recording of this video later. And we thank you all for attending and look forward to being in community with you all. And just remember, every vote counts towards improving our community and getting us to a place where we want to be in Ward 9. Thank you all.
Gracias, la lucha sigue.
Always take